Welcome to session 4 of the practice of marriage, and overall, this is our ninth session of our pre-marriage counseling. Today, we want to talk about a very tricky subject, a subject that a lot of times is very uncomfortable for couples, even though this is going to be a common practice, fairly common practice inside their relationship, and that is we're going to talk about the pitfalls of pleasure and passion. The pitfalls of pleasure and passion. Again, depending on what research you read, sex is always ranked as in the top 3 reasons for divorce. And in most studies that you'll read, this is the number one reason for divorce. And so let's spend a few minutes talking about why that is and how we can help, how we can prepare ourselves to avoid that pitfall. First, we need to understand that sex is good, but it is not the goal of marriage. It's good, but it is not the goal of marriage. Sex is good because it was created and ordained by God. He has given an entire chapter in Song of Solomon 4 about this gift. I have placed a link in the notes section for a teaching on this chapter that I think will be highly beneficial for you. But again, sex is good, but again, it is not the goal of the marriage. Sex is meant to deepen marriage to becoming one, the sexual act. But if we don't exercise extreme care, it will destroy our marriage. Husbands must guard themselves against sexual deviance. Okay, guys, many of us have been messed up through pornography, and every guy's watched pornography or has looked at a pornographic magazine. This is something that is virtually unavoidable in our day and time, and so we're broken sexually to begin with. We're all sexual deviants to begin with. God has put in our lives the ability to lust after women, and it is this innate ability that gives us a desire to want to have sex and to procreate and to share ourselves with our wives. However, sin has broken this, and it has touched our sexuality in so many different ways, and then the world around us has only served to pervert that. And so, in essence, we are all deviants. We are all broken sexually, and this plays itself out in our relationships in so many ways, and it causes ultimately great distress in our marriage because we have been so warped by pornography in our day that when our wives don't act like a porn star, or they don't give us what we want, when we want, as much as we want, because again, marriage is not a free-for-all sexually as well. It's not have as much sex as you possibly can. When we begin to operate that way, we're actually treating our wives as though they are our prostitute. They are here for our sexual pleasure. They become nothing more than an object, so they become objectified in our relationship. And again, I don't think this is the desire of any man's heart, though it is often the condition of many hearts, and our sexual deviance really plays itself out. And wait till the first time that your wife doesn't want to have sex or puts you off from it, and see how at times visceral your reaction is to that, and you'll really see how how deviant you really are when it comes to sexuality. However, there's also a caution here for the wives. Wives must guard themselves against sexual deprivation, and that is often withholding sex from their husbands for control purposes, for retaliation purposes. There's so many different ways, so many different reasons why women will often withhold sex from their husbands. So wives, guard yourselves against deprivation. Understand how your husband's wired up. He is wired up vastly different than you are. He is a hypersexual individual. Testosterone is flowing through his body. while at the same time, husbands realize that that is not a reason for your wife to have sex with you every time that you desire to have sex with her. If that's the case, then you would never go to work. You'd never get anything accomplished in your life because of the prevalence of sexual thought within the mind and within the heart of a man. And so you need to guard yourself against that as well. Even Paul would encourage couples that there may need to be times within the marriage relationship where there is an abstinence of sexual activity within the relationship for the sake and the betterment of the relationship. He talks about that in the book of 1 Corinthians. So something to be on guard about and to guard ourselves against in our marriage. So husbands, let's talk to you real quick. Guard yourself from this pitfall by first affections. Focus on heart stimulation. Learn, work on your heart. Work to not to be stimulated sexually by your wife, but work on your heart and that your heart be stimulated by who she is. So work on your affections for her, not sexual lust, not sexual desire, but true abiding affections for her. Like we talked about earlier when we talked about affirming her. Affirmation is not, hey, you look hot in that red dress, but it's more focused in on the character of who she is rather than the content of her physical looks. Because trust me, all of that is going downhill as we speak, and one day the the physical beauty that you find stimulating now will be gone. It's just a fact of life. And so work on your affections, focus on heart stimulation. Second, work on communication. And I'm back to again that ACTS acronym in helping us to remember what we should do. Focus on mental stimulation. Focus in on stimulating your partner's mind. Just as much as you focus on affection and focus in on stimulating her heart, focus in on her mind as well. Mental stimulation. Women love communication. They talk far more than men do. That's been a proven fact. They'll say, men will say almost 80% of their words by 5 o'clock, and most women have only said about 40% of their words by 5 o'clock. So we need to focus on communication. We need to focus on mental stimulation. Then third, touch. We need to focus on emotional stimulation. And again, this is not leading towards any type of sexual activity, even though there may be times where that's true, especially when we focused in on the heart and we have focused in on the mind and we are looking for the emotional side of it, connecting emotionally with our wives, then sometimes that may lead to copulation, but it may not. But it's not the goal. Again, sex is not the goal of marriage. All right, it's not the goal of marriage. So focus in on emotional stimulation, and then fourth, enjoy the satisfaction. Focusing on the heart, the mind, and the emotions always leads to satisfaction. And that's the way we'll guard ourselves against this pitfall of sexual deviance, is that our focus is not to get to sex, our focus is to get to satisfaction. And wives, guard yourselves against this pitfall by understanding how your husband is wired up. As I said earlier, he is wired sexually. Testosterone is flowing through his body. God has made him this way. If he hadn't, it would be very tough for us to procreate in our day. But again, this is not a reason for your husband to feel like he can have sex with you whenever he wants. You are not a sexual conquest. You are his wife. You are someone that he is to give himself to in greater ways than sexually. And again, goal is not the sex of marriage. It is a good gift that God has given us. But wives, guard yourself against deprivation, and give yourself more to your husband, because you understand his own nature, and it's good as well. I mean, again, there's no excuse for a husband to cheat on his wife, but many husbands go looking for end up in extramarital affairs because of this very issue that happens at home. And so again, there must be a balance. We must help our husbands combat. You must help your husbands combat our struggle with sexual deviance and lust, by helping to keep that fire in check by meeting and satisfying sexual needs of your husband as well, as much as he needs to keep you from looking elsewhere by focusing in on your heart, your mind, and your emotions, because many women end up in extramarital affairs because their husband is not winning their heart, is not stimulating their mind, and is not touching their emotions. Wives, guard yourselves against this pitfall by not depriving your husband as a way of retaliation. Never withhold sex from your husband as a way of retaliation because of something he's done or not done. That's just not Christian. Period. It's not healthy, but it's not Christian, because that is unforgiveness. You are not giving your husband something that you would give him had he done differently. And so again, forgive him and seek his welfare as well. And then lastly, wives, guard yourselves against this pitfall by seeking to satisfy your husband. Learn as much as your husband needs to learn your love language, and as much as he needs to understand how to seek you out, how to touch your heart, how to touch your mind, how to touch your emotions. You as well need to seek how to satisfy your husband, what meets his needs. He's wired totally different from you. You cannot go after him the way you want him to come after you. Again, both husbands and wives here, listen to me. There are great books that are out, and I'll put some of these in the show notes of books that help women to understand men and men to help understand women. And these books can become vitally important because women are ovens and husbands are microwaves. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. All the descriptive terms that exist in our world today to describe the differences between men and women, and they're very real. And we need to understand that about each other so that we can serve each other well and satisfy each other and meet the need that the other person has, so that we can keep these foxes out of our marriages and prevent ourselves by falling into the pitfalls, that the landmines that are laying before us that will send us into a very dull, disappointing marriage, or one that can send us into a marriage that's full of delight and deepening. So again, check the show notes, and you'll see some of those books and those sermons that I've put out there that you can listen to, that you can buy on Amazon, and help yourself to better understand your spouse.